Mythology is a very complex and interesting topic of conversation, since many religions or countries have their own gods, and that makes mythology something wonderful. Today we will talk about the goddess of the sun and fertility Amaterasu, from Japanese folklore, being one of the most important goddesses, and her name literally means shining in the sky. Make yourself comfortable and let's see this story. Mainly we will see how was the birth of the goddess, and is that according to the myth of the deities Izanagi, god of creation, like Izanami, goddess of creation. Together they had different deities ranging from natural, marine, mountain, grass and wind. The last to be born was Kagetsuchi, god of fire. At the time he was born caused burns that ended with the death of his mother Izanami. Desperate Izanagi traveled to the land of the dead, and she asks him not to see her, but he ignored and saw his wife, who was covered with worms, onis and other demons. Seeing his rejection of her, Izanami became enraged and tried to chase him beyond the gates of death. However, he managed to escape, so she swore that, if he left her there, she would kill 1,000 people every day. Before such an event, and horrified, Izanagi flees and returns to the Ashihara no Nakatsukuни, the place that is between the world of the dead and the sky, to purify himself in the water. While washing his left eye was born Amaterasu, fully grown and radiant with sunlight, then washed his right eye, and from it was born Tsukuyumi, the moon that reflects the light of her sister. Later, when she cleaned her nose, was born Susanoo, the god of storms and the ruler of the seas. These three kami had the task of ruling the heavens and protect the world from the curse of Izanami, with Amaterasu as leader. The sun goddess has always been the most important kami within Japanese spiritual life. Amaterasu is an incarnation of the rising sun of the Japanese flag symbol. She not only serves as the sun that illuminates all things, but also provides nourishment to all living creatures, and marks the orderly movement from day to night. The Japanese imperial family, claiming to have descended from Amaterasu and from there obtained their right to rule, abide by these principles and have long served as leaders of Japanese society, and have always used this position to ensure that Amaterasu's place as Queen of Heaven and control of her courts are reflected in their rule. Many places of worship in Japan are dedicated to her, including the Ise Jingu Shrine, one of the most sacred shrines in the archipelago. Now we will see some of her most important myths, but first I ask you to please subscribe, because that motivates me to continue bringing more videos about all kinds of mythological stories. Now let's continue. One of the most important myths of the goddess is that of her with her brother Susanoo. Once with the task that Izanagi gave Amaterasu, she was considered as a goddess of kind and compassionate character, while her brother was the opposite. He was an arrogant god and therefore caused the anger of the goddess, which chained the eternal darkness. It all began with a competition, in which the god Susanoo challenged his sister to see who had greater power. Amaterasu made appear large rice plantations, also took the sword of Susanoo and broke it into three, giving rise to three goddesses who placed in the spinning mill that was his sacred building. Susanoo instead used the beads of fertility of Amaterasu to produce 5 monstrous and very aggressive beings, and subsequently proclaimed himself the winner. Amaterasu, however, did not accept his brother's statement that he had used his magical beads to create the monstrous beings. Susanoo angrily destroyed the rice fields, spread dirt on his sacred buildings, and dismembered Amaterasu's celestial horse, dropping its skin through the roof of the spinning mill. Enraged and frightened by Susanoo's actions, Amaterasu entered a cave and closed the entrance, taking with her the sunlight inside the cave. Subsequently, by locking herself in the cave, the world was plunged into total darkness, plants stopped growing, and fear and famine gripped the world. So, to lure the goddess, Omoikane, the god of intelligence, came up with a plan. He asked the other gods to gather outside the cave with various sacred objects, including a mirror and some jewelry. Those outside the cave told Amaterasu of another goddess brighter than her. Curious, Amaterasu looked and saw her reflection, an image she had never previously seen. The image of her own brilliance so startled her that she left the cave. While outside the cave, one of the gods closed the cave door, securing it with a rope, to prevent Amaterasu from returning to it and depriving the world of her light. But this cost Susanoo dearly, and as punishment for what he had done to Japan, Susanoo was exiled, so he defeated the dragon Yamata no Orochi, the monster that made him famous, and later managed to reconcile with the goddess, giving her a sacred sword. There is a theory that natural phenomena such as solar eclipses or the winter solstice are behind the myth of Iwayato, which narrates the extinction of the sun and its rebirth. Although the dramatic description of the world plunged into darkness when Amaterasu hides in the cave may evoke the image of a total eclipse, it is unlikely that such an infrequent phenomenon would be captured in a myth. Today the occurrence of eclipses is accurately calculated in all parts of the world, but in ancient times they occurred unexpectedly. There is little chance that in a small village, busy with everyday life, an eclipse would be observed and, unless the phenomenon was repeated in nearby generations of the same place, although not as spectacular as the eclipse, it is more likely that the myth was inspired by the phenomenon of the winter solstice, in which the sunlight weakens as it enters the new season to shine again more brightly at the arrival of spring. Within the myths of Amaterasu are the three sacred treasures of Japan. According to the chronicles Kojiki, the Japanese goddess of the sun, would have sent her grandson, the famous Ninigi, the ancestor of the entire imperial dynasty, to the earth to reign there. Amaterasu gave him a sword, a mirror and a jewel. These objects became the three treasures of Japan. But why? Well, each emblem has a symbolism. The first is the sword Kusanagi no Tsurugi, offered by Susanoo in reconciliation with his sister and symbolizes sharing. The second object is the mirror, called Yata no Kagami, is the object that brought the god out of her cave, and represents wisdom. The last object is the jewel or Magatama, which represents kindness and teaching. And well, until here comes the story of the goddess of the sun, certainly an important deity for Japan. Comment that you think the story of Amaterasu. Do not forget to leave your like and subscription. See you in the next video. See you later.